let me introduce myself. So myself, Sai, like I have around 7 years of experience on Salesforce platform. So initially, I worked as a developer, and post that I worked as a Salesforce release engineer, and even now, like currently, I'm working as a Salesforce release engineer. So what we are going to do today is, like I will give you a brief background on how DevOps process looks on Salesforce platform, and apart from that, we are going to see the skills that are required for a Salesforce release or DevOps engineer, and post that I will also show you the topics which we are going to cover as part of this particular course. Let me share my screen. So if you have any questions, you can keep your questions until I give you some time. So after I complete my narration, I will give you few minutes in the end, so that if you have any questions, you can ask me. Let me share my screen. So before I tell you the definition of DevOps, so first, in order to understand the term DevOps, first you need to understand few terms, and like the process which people will follow in the process of building an application in software industry. So generally, like what happens is, like any business, whichever plans to enhance its revenue. So what happens is, like they will plan to have an application in order to run their business. So whenever a business plans to have an application, so what happens is they will reach out to a software company explaining the kind of business whichever they are doing, and what happens post that is, based on the kind of business that particular company is doing. So like in software company, what happens is, like we will have a different category of people. So we will have someone called as architects, we will have someone called as developers, we will have someone called as project managers. So like after listening to the requirements of that particular business, so what happens is, like they will like they will think on the platform on which that particular application is to be built, and apart from that, they will also think or make a note of all of the things which needs to be implemented in order to build that particular application. So that happens in the background before starting the development of an application. So now, when it comes to developing an application, what happens is, like there will be different phases involved in the process of building an application. So this particular process, which people will follow in order to build an application, is called as software development lifecycle. So the time period from starting to plan like software development lifecycle is nothing but it is the time period starting from planning to have an application to building an application. So let me show you a diagram. So if you look at this particular diagram, so this particular diagram shows different phases involved in software development lifecycle. So here, the definition of software development lifecycle is, it is nothing but it is the time period starting from planning to have an application to building an application. So instead of saying it as building an application, starting from planning to have an application to making the application live for end users. So now, when it comes to the different phases involved in software development lifecycle, so it starts off with something called as planning phase. In planning phase, what happens is, like people will just plan to have an application. So apart from planning to have an application, there is nothing that happens in this particular phase. So based on the kind of business whichever a company is doing, so they will just plan to have an application in order to enhance their business, or in order to enhance their revenue. So the next phase after planning phase will be the defining phase. So in defining phase, what happens is, people will make a note of the things whichever make a note of the features that needs to be part of that particular application which needs to be built. So they will just make a note of the things on a paper, which will be called as documenting the things as well. So after the defining phase, the next phase is designing phase. In the designing phase, what happens is, based on the features which are documented in defining phases. So someone called as software architects will analyze those those features, and they will choose a platform on which that particular application should be built. And apart from choosing the platform, they will also uh, make a note of all of the things that needs to be implemented in order to build that particular application. So it is a kind of architecting all of the things whichever are required to be implemented in order to build that particular application. So after designing phase, so next phase will be building phase. In building phase, what happens is uh, the feature, like the things which needs to be implemented in order to build that particular application, will be passed from architects to a team of developers, and team of developers will start building that particular application. So here in building phase, the actual development of the application starts. And after developers build the application, so the next phase is after the building phase, the next phase is testing phase. And in testing phase, what happens is testing of the application whichever is built by developers happens. And after testing phase, the next phase is deployment phase. So deployment phase is nothing but the application whichever is tested will be made available for end users, or it will be deployed to live environment. So these are the six phases which will be involved in software development lifecycle. So if you look at if we look at what is happening in software development lifecycle, so it is nothing but it is just the time period starting from planning to have an application to making the application available for end users. So that is the meaning of software development lifecycle. Next is, so before I tell you the definition of DevOps, so you need to be aware of few terms. One is environment. So in software terminology, environment is nothing but it is a place where an application lives or runs in. So in order to understand this particular term called as environment, what you can do is you can consider an application running on a mobile phone or a desktop. So if you take an application running on a mobile phone, what happens is, mobile phone is nothing but it is a collection of physical components. On top of that, people will install something called as operating system, and on top of operating system, what happens is people will install these applications together. The physical components whichever make the mobile device, and the operating system makes up the environment whichever is required to run that particular application. So environment in software terminology is nothing but it is a place where an application lives or runs. Next is, apart from environment, so you can also consider an application running on desktop as well, desktop or laptop. Even the same thing happens there as well. When it comes to desktop or laptop, even it is a collection of physical components, and on top of that, we will install something called as operating system, and on top of that, applications run. So apart from environment, the next term which you should be aware of is, so you should be aware of something called as live environment. So live environment is nothing but it is a place where the application will be used by end users. So for every application, what happens is there will be a set of users or group of users who will be making use of that particular application. And live environment is a place where application will be used by end users. Someone got unmuted. Okay, please stay on mute because there is some kind of disturbance. Uh, okay. So apart from live environment, so in the process of developing an application, what happens is we will see something called as testing environments as well as development environments as well. Now, So testing environments are the environments where the testing of the application, whichever is built by development teams, happens, and development environments are the environments where the actual development or building of the application happens. So now you may get a doubt like why we need to have separate environments in order to do the development and in order to do the testing, and why we need a separate environment where that particular application will be used by end users. So there are some valid reasons for this. So we'll come to those reasons later. So there are some valid reasons because of which people will make use of different environments in order to build an application. So if I want to tell you a simple reason, so if you consider an example of a banking application, so let's assume the case of a banking application. So if you take a banking application, what happens with banking applications is people will make use of banking applications in order to transfer money from their account to another accounts. Primarily, we will make use of banking applications in order to transfer money. So now let's assume there are two accounts. One is account one is account one, and the other one is account two. Let's assume balance in account 1 is 1 lakh, and let's assume balance in account 2 is 50,000. So now if you consider this case, suppose let's assume that person whoever is holding this particular account 1 is trying to send an amount of 50,000 from his account to uh, account 2. So now when this happens, like in order to make this happen, what happens is person one, like the person whoever is holding this particular account 1 will log into the banking application, and he will initiate a transaction, or he will initiate a payment of 50,000. So now whenever this particular person tries to send 50,000 from his account to another account, the first thing which should happen is the banking application. So the application itself should check whether the balance in his account is greater than 50,000 or not. So if the balance in his account is less than 50,000, so like he should not be allowed to make that transfer or payment, and ideally the transaction should not happen. And if the balance in his account is greater than 50,000, the transaction should happen. And similarly, once the transaction happens, balance in his account should get updated with the amount whichever is transferred, and it should reflect the balance that will be present after deducting that particular amount whichever is transferred. And when once the transaction happens successfully, transaction or payment happens successfully, balance in account 2 should get updated, and it should reflect the balance after summing up the amount whichever is transferred. So these things should happen. Now let's assume that suppose this kind of application was built in a live environment. So live environment is nothing but there the application will be used by end users. So suppose if you assume this kind of application was built in a live environment, and once people started using that particular application, what happened is, so bank noticed that even if there is not sufficient balance in the consumers, or in the consumers or the in the account holders of that particular bank. So if transactions happens, then it is a kind of loss to that particular bank. So this is one example because of which people will not prefer developing the application directly in live environment. So if we build the application directly in a live environment, so what happens is we will see some kind of issues. In order to avoid those issues, what happens is people will not prefer developing the application directly in live environment. And similarly, there are valid reasons because of which even testing of the application doesn't happen in development environments. Because what happens is whole of the requirements whichever are required in order to build an application will be splitted into small requirements, and there will be multiple people who will work on these small requirements. So now what happens is if you don't have a separate environment for testing, and if we start testing the application in development environments, So the changes whichever developers try to make will interfere with the testing, and the testing doesn't happen smoothly. So that is the reason because of which people will not prefer testing the application in development environments. So because of these reasons, so like there are few more other reasons as well. So I'll tell those reasons later, because even if tell you those reasons now, you won't be able to understand them. So what you can keep in mind is, because of some valid reasons, so we will make use of different environments in the process of building an application. Now, when it comes to the definition of DevOps, so DevOps is nothing but it is one process, it is one process, or it is a process which will be followed, which will be followed in the process of building an application, building an application which improves the efficiency of software development lifecycle. So this is the definition of DevOps. Now, in order to understand this particular statement, so you should also identify, first you should be aware of what are all the challenges which developers will face in the process of developing an application. So instead of saying it as the challenges faced by developers, we can tell you should be aware of the challenges which people will face in the process of building an application. So there will be some kind of challenges which people will face in the process of building an application. So DevOps will aim to smoothen that particular process, smoothen that particular process by overcoming the hurdles whichever the people will face in the process of building an application. So that's why like what happens is like it will target to improve the efficiency of software development lifecycle. So we will see like how DevOps will improve the efficiency of software development lifecycle later in the actual sessions. But for now, you can keep in mind the definition of DevOps. So which is nothing but it is a process which will be followed in the process of building an application, which aims to improve the efficiency of software development lifecycle. Next is so let me tell you the like how DevOps process looks like on Salesforce platform. So like when it comes to the DevOps process on Salesforce platform, what happens is Salesforce is a cloud platform, and as it is a cloud platform, and one more is apart from platform, Salesforce is nothing but it is a CRM provider. So what happens with Salesforce is like whenever a company purchases a Salesforce account, it will come up with a lot of pre-built features. So on top of these pre-built features, what happens is like people will, based on the business requirements, so they will custom, like they will have an option to customize the things as well, so that they can build an application in order to meet their business requirements. Now, when it comes to Salesforce, what happens is if we take the difference between Salesforce platform and some other platform, so what happens is in Salesforce you are not required to take care of something called as infrastructure management, because as it is a cloud platform, and as it is a CRM provider, so you are not required to take care of this infrastructure management. So Salesforce will handle this infrastructure management, and we are not required to worry about the infrastructure management. And next thing is, let me tell you the before I move on to the next thing. First, let me tell you the things like whichever you do as a Salesforce release engineer. So let me tell you the responsibilities of a Salesforce release engineer. So what happens is when it comes to this particular role, so you will be responsible for creating environments. You will be responsible for creating environments, and you will be responsible for setting up something called a CI/CD process, setting up CI/CD process, and you will be responsible for migrating the application code from one environment to another environment. And apart from this, you will be responsible for providing access to people to environments. So these are the primary things, like all these are the primary responsibilities which you will be doing as a Salesforce release engineer. Now, when it comes to creating environments and providing access to people to environments, it is a simple thing. Like a creation of environments on Salesforce platform is a very simple thing. But if you take any other platform, so creation of environment is somewhat difficult when we compare it with Salesforce. And when it comes to these two, setting up CI/CD process and migrating the application code from one environment to another environment. So in order to do this, you should be aware of few tools. Like in order to migrate the application code from one environment to another environment, you should have knowledge on something called as build tools. And in order to set up the CI/CD process, you should have knowledge on Git, and you should have knowledge on a couple of scripting languages like shell scripting and YAML scripting. And in order to migrate the application code from one environment to another environment, you should have knowledge on something called as build tools. So that's it. So if you have knowledge on build tools, and if you have knowledge on Git, shell scripting and YAML scripting, so you will be able to handle all of the responsibilities of this particular role. So now, in order, like let me tell you the skills which are required in order to handle this particular role. So first, you should have knowledge on something called as build tools. So when it comes to build tools, so we have CLI, and we have ant migration tool, and apart from ant migration tool, there are a few other build tools as well. So we have something called as cumulus CI, and so there are some other build tools as well. So if you have knowledge on a couple of build tools, it will be sufficient. Like if you have knowledge on one build tool, what happens is, like with those knowledge, you will be able to handle any other build tool as well. When it comes to Salesforce platform, what happens is, like CLI is one of the most widely used build tool. So in almost some 90 to 95% of the projects, what happens is that people will make use of CLI only. So nowadays, people are not making use of this ant migration tool, but earlier, some few years back, people used to make use of this ant migration tool. So if you have knowledge on CLI, that is sufficient in order to handle the responsibilities of this particular role. But even if you have knowledge on ant migration tool, so that will be somewhat useful for you while giving the interviews. Apart from the build tools, so the next thing is, you should have knowledge on Git. So like you should be aware of the things like what is meant by Git, and what are all the features of Git. So I'll show you the I will tell about those things later, but you should have knowledge on Git. Apart from Git, so if you have knowledge on some basic shell commands, like you don't require knowledge on shell scripting, so you should have knowledge on shell commands, and you should have either knowledge on shell or YAML scripting. So if you have this knowledge, even having knowledge on this shell as well as YAML is one of the requirement of this particular role. And apart from this, you should have knowledge on some of the automated tools. So automated CI/CD tools available for Salesforce platform. So when it comes to automated tools, so there are many automated tools available in the market. So one is Copado, other one is GearSet, and other one is AutoRapid, and we have something called as Flowsum. Likewise, there are few other automated tools as well. So if you have knowledge on couple of automated tools, apart from the above skills, that is sufficient. And apart from this, you should also have knowledge on how you can create Salesforce environments. And apart from this, you should also have some basic knowledge on Salesforce admin stuff as well. Some basic knowledge on Salesforce admin. Even if you don't have knowledge on Salesforce admin, you will be able to handle or survive in this particular role. But if you have knowledge on Salesforce admin, what happens is like in the process of migrating this particular application code from one environment to another environment, so we will see few kind of issues. So in order to troubleshoot those issues, if you have knowledge on Salesforce admin, it will be an advantage. But it's not like if you don't have knowledge on Salesforce admin, you won't be able to troubleshoot those issues. But it's like if you have knowledge, you will be troubleshoot them somewhat.
Sai, if you're talking, you're not audible. Is it only with me or anyone else has that issue?
Yes, yes, yeah. Me also.
Is anyone here who let us know that what is going to happen? Like how much more time we have to wait?
Yes, Viva, I just talked to Visual Bar. They are checking.
Yeah, the same he wrote me. I have also messaged them. They are saying they are checking it now.
What is
Let's
that
wait for
they are
next time.
checking?
They said that they are getting in touch with Sai. Let's see.
Actually, I joined a little late. So did he told like they will be covering that robotic testing also in this course? Does anyone has any idea?
We have not come to that stage also, and
Okay,
I think all the 30 minutes is not really related to what they're going to cover.
okay, all right,
Only
sure.
last 10 minutes I think it's relevant.
All right. Okay. I think I joined around 11, like after 15 minutes it joined. So I was not sure whether he covered like the things we will be
You
doing.
did not miss anything.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. That is good. Looks like we will have it again tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. So I'm not sure until where you have listened. So can someone tell me like until where you have followed me?
You were talking about that shell scripts and all that, what we need, the builds and all that, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And
You covered these tools like what CI/CD tools we have, water migration tools we have, till that. So,
Okay. So
and
I
how
was
you
not.
can create an environment using these particular tools, and you have like bit idea about Salesforce admin. That's what completed till now.
So 1 minute. So let me way. So what I did, what I was explaining was, so I was just explaining you the different tools which we are going to cover in this particular course. Uh, so like, did I move on to course content or I was
no, no, course content not
I think
started yet.
that's what
oh,
pending. I think.
okay, okay. So I think I explained the skills that are required for this particular role, and suppose that I think I got disconnected.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, yes.
fine, fine. So let
Can
me,
you please share your screen? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I have not shared it. 1 second. So I saw comment from message from Navin saying that I think we can listen to this recording later as well. I think Navin posted that message in the channel.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. It's up to you. Like, if you want to hear it later, you can hear it later, or if you want to follow it now, you can follow it now. Okay.
No, no.
So
I
I
mean, is it available later on? Currently, we are
sorry.
following, but later, will this be available for us?
Yes, yes, it will be available. So each of the session recordings will be uploaded to a portal, and you will be given access
Okay,
to that.
okay.
1 second. Okay, so what I did is like after explaining you the skills that are required for this particular role, I moved on to this course content document. So what happens is like we are first. I'm going to start with a tool called as Workbench. So I will show you how we can migrate Salesforce code using Workbench first. Post that, what happens is like I'm going to cover a tool called as CLI or SFDX. So it is one of the most widely used build tools on Salesforce platform. So it is a command line tool. We are going to see like some of the most frequently used CLI commands, and post that we are going to see how we can migrate Salesforce code using this tool called as CLI or SFDX. And after doing this, so like in order to explain both of these tools, what happens is like I will create two trial Salesforce accounts. I will consider one account as development account or development environment, and I will consider the other as testing environment. So for both of these, I will create those trial accounts, and I will create some components in development environment or development accounts, and I will show you how we can migrate those components from development environments to testing environments. Next, after covering CLI, we are going to see the features of Git. So here in Git, what happens is like I will tell you what is meant by Git, and we'll see what is meant by a version control system, and what are the features of a version control system. So apart from that, we are going to see things like what is meant by a repository, what are branches, and what is meant by branching restrictions, and how can we provide access to people to repositories. And apart from that, so we are also going to see some of the most frequently used Git commands. When it comes to Git, what happens is like most of the things can be done by a point and click, or we can make use of commands as well. So we are going to see some of the most frequently used Git commands for like by our role. And after this, after covering the features of Git, what I will do is I will consider an example of a real-time project where CLI will be used as the build tool and Bitbucket will be used as the repository. So here, what happens is like I will consider a case of a project, real-time project. I will assume that there will be two development teams, a testing environment and a production environment. So I will assume that kind of project. And here we will create the environments. First, we will create the Salesforce environments. Post that, we will create a Bitbucket account. After creating the Bitbucket account, we will create a repository and post that. So after doing this, we will do all of the things whichever people will do in a real-time project in order to set up the DevOps process or CI/CD process for a project. So, like after setting up the things, what I will do is I will consider examples of real-time requirements which developers will work in real-time projects. I will implement those requirements in development environments, and after implementing them in development environments, I will show you the migration process which people will follow in order to migrate the changes from development environment to testing environments, and the migration process which people will follow in order to migrate the changes from testing environment to live environment. So we are going to do that. So here in this particular project, we are going to set up all of the things from scratch, and we are going to cover all of the things whichever people will do in real-time project. So I'm going to cover this particular project after Git. And before this particular project, so in this Bitbucket project, we are going to configure something called as Bitbucket pipelines. So before, like initially what we will do is, we will do the deployments manually. So like we will retrieve the code from a Salesforce environment, we will push the code to a repository, and we will do the deployments onto the next environment manually first. Later, what we will do is like we will make use of something called as Bitbucket pipelines in order to automate the deployments. So before configuring Bitbucket pipelines, so you should have knowledge on shell and YAML scripting. So I will tell you some of the basics of shell, and I will tell you the rules of YAML language. After covering this, I will show you how we can make use of like how we can configure Bitbucket pipelines in order to automate the deployments. After this, so after this particular project, I am going to cover Copado. So even for Copado, what happens is like I will assume the case of a real-time project. So where I will assume like there will be two development teams, either one or two testing environments. One will be used by internal testing team, and the other will be used by business team, and we'll have a live environment as well. So we are going to assume a project of that kind, and we are going to do all of the things from scratch. Again, here we'll create the environments first. After that, we'll create a repository, and we will do all of the things which needs to be configured in Copado in order to set up the CI/CD process. And after setting up the process, again, I will take examples of real-time requirements which people will develop in development environments, and post that we will see the migration process that will be followed in order to migrate the changes from development to testing environment, and from testing environment to uh, production or live environment. So apart from that, so I'm also going to show you like what are the kind of checks which people will place in order to migrate the changes from one environment to another environment. So with this, like in this process, what happens is like I am going to cover all of the features of Copado which people will make use of in real-time project. So we are going to cover almost all of the features of Copado. So after seeing Copado, Copado has two variants. One is Copado Enterprise and the other one is Copado Essentials. So after covering Enterprise, we are going to cover Copado Essentials, which is the other variant of Copado. So even here, I'm going to take an example of a real-time project, and we'll set up all of the things from scratch, and we'll see the migration process to different environments. And after seeing Copado Essentials, I'm going to consider an example of one more project where CLI will be the build tool, and GitHub will be the repository. So here again we are going to set up all of the things. But the difference between this Bitbucket and CLI project and CLI and GitHub project is, so here we are going to configure something called as GitHub Actions in order to automate the deployments. Post this, what I'm going to do is, so generally like after completing Copado, I will tell you something called as sandboxes. So like I will tell you what is meant by sandbox, and the different types of sandboxes available and the differences between them. And we'll also see something called a sandbox refresh, the purpose of sandbox refresh, and the steps which people will follow in the process of refreshing a sandbox. And post that, I will also explain you something called as change sets. Change sets is the native deployment feature offered by Salesforce. So nowadays people are making use not making use of change sets in order to migrate the components. But earlier, a few years back, people used to make use of change sets in order to migrate components from one environment to another environment. So even nowadays, in some projects, you will see people making use of change sets. So because of that, I'm going to cover change sets as well. So apart from that, so I'm go also generally, like, I don't prefer explaining you the features of Ant migration tool, because after we cover CLI or SFDX, I will ask you to set up the things using Ant migration tool. If you are not able to set up the things, then what happens is, like, I will take 1 or 2 sessions in order to explain the features of Ant migration tool as well. So even though people are not nowadays, people are not making use of Ant migration tool, having knowledge on Ant migration tool and changes will be useful for you while giving interviews, because people will ask you questions around these like Ant migration tool as well as changes as well. And so finally, what I will do is, I will consider an example of a real-time project where we will make use of GateSet as the CSAD tool, and we'll consider any Git provider. So we'll consider some Git provider, and we are going to cover the features of GateSet. So actually, earlier I used to explain or give a brief overview on how we can set up the things for a Salesforce project using AutoRabbit. But the problem with AutoRabbit is it is a strictly licensed tool. It won't be possible to get a trial account in order to understand the features of AutoRabbit. That's why, like, I will be replacing this particular section with GateSet. Post that, like, if you want some kind of inputs on how we can set up the things using AutoRabbit, I can do that as well. I have a document available. I can explain you the things using that particular document. Now, apart from this, so I used to get questions from people who attended my earlier demos, saying that whether I am going to cover any other tools apart from the tools whichever I have specified in this particular document. So when it comes to automated tools, apart from Copado GateSet, we have some other set of automated tools like Flowsum, and I think there are a few other tools as well. So I'm not going to cover other tools apart from the tools I have specified here. The reason for that is, once you get an understanding on setting up the things using two automated tools, you will be in a position to set up the things using any other type of automated tool. The reason for that is, the steps will remain the same. The only thing which gets changed is, so there will be a minor difference in the way how we configure the things using a specific tool. So, but the steps will remain the same. That's why, so once you have knowledge on two automated tools, you will be in a position to set up the things using any other automated tool. Apart from that, when it comes to Git providers, so even the same thing applies to gets applicable to Git providers as well. So people will ask me whether I'm going to cover Azure DevOps or GitLab or some other Git provider. So the same thing gets applicable to this as well. So when you have knowledge on setting up the things using two Git providers, you will be able to set up the things using any other Git providers. So that's why, like, I'm not going to cover other Git providers or other automated tools, because like you will get bored, because the steps will remain the same. So these are the things which I'm going to cover as part of this particular course. In order to explain all of this, I will require some 25 to 30 days. Each day we will have a session of around 1 hour. So how these sessions will go on is, after we complete each and every session, so I will share some notes related to the topics whichever I cover. And apart from that, I will also give you a few tasks for you to practice, so that you will get a better understanding. So that's how the sessions will go on. So after completion of the course, so generally, like, if you strictly follow my sessions regularly, and if you do the things, if you practice the things, you should be able, like, you should be in a position to give the interview by yourself. So that's how I will plan the sessions, and you should definitely gain that confidence. So even after attending the sessions, if you are not in a position to give the interviews, so then it's your fault. Definitely, it's not my fault, because I am going to frame the things in that way. And so even after this, if you are not if you don't gain enough confidence, and if you require any interview support or any assistance in giving the interviews, you can definitely let me know. So I will provide you support on that aspect. So that is about the skills or topics which we are going to cover as part of this particular course. Next thing is, what I will do now is, I will take some 15 more minutes. Suppose that I will give you a few minutes. If you have any questions, you can ask me. So wait for 15 minutes. So what I will do in this 15 minutes is, I will show you how we can migrate Salesforce code or Salesforce components using something called as Workbench.
Oh,
So in
but
order
before that, Sai, are you
Hmm.
going to cover? I know you covered the syllabus. My interest is only like on automation testing using Copado. Is that what is that? Is that a part of this one or something else?
So actually, for that, you should have knowledge on something called as Copado robotic testing.
Okay,
So
are you
as
covering that?
no, I'm not going to cover that
Okay,
in the
okay.
course.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
So is there a separate course for this Copado robotic testing site?
Our institute is not.
Uh, yeah, but the flyer is misleading. We came to join only just for that.
Okay, okay. I understood.
Bye, bye.
Understood. Yeah. So generally, we are not going to cover Copado robotic testing here. So, have you joined for Copado robotic testing?
Actually, yeah. Actually, my company they are shifting to that Copado
Hmm.
robotic testing. So I'm more like aggressively. I'm looking for that one to start because they want to start it like now immediately.
Okay, okay. So, this course is specifically for people who is looking to start or switch to a position called as Salesforce DevOps or release engineer.
So roughly, it will take like how many days? Like 5 days week, right? You said.
Yes. So we'll have a session, 1 hour session daily, and
Okay.
yeah. So we'll have sessions 5 days for each week.
So
For how
session would
for,
be evening or morning?
So it will be based on the feedback whichever we receive from people. So what happens is, institute people will be checking with the convenient timings of the people, whoever has attended this particular demo, and based on the convenience of the people, we will plan the timing accordingly. So it will be either in the evening hours or morning hours, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, or between 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. in the evening.
Okay.
and like roughly like how many 1 month it will take? How many?
Yeah, 1 month.
Oh, okay. All right.
1 month or 1 month plus 1 week.
Okay. Around 5 weeks, right?
Yeah, around 5 weeks. Okay, any other questions from anyone? Okay, so if there are no questions, I will take 15 more minutes. So what I will do in this 15 minutes is, I will show you how we can migrate Salesforce components using something called as Workbench. Now, in order to do this, so what I will do is, I will consider two Salesforce environments. You can create these Salesforce environments or accounts. So Salesforce, what happens is, it will offer trial accounts for someone who want to learn Salesforce or understand the features of Salesforce. So I'm going to make use of two Salesforce trial accounts. One I will use one account or environment. I will consider it as a dev environment, and the other account I will consider it as a QA environment. So here, generally, like in Salesforce terminology, environment or account or organization or org means the same. So I'll be using these terms interchangeably. So organization or org or account or environment mean the same. So now, as of now, I already have a couple of Salesforce accounts, trial accounts, which I created earlier. So if someone doesn't have an idea on how we can create a Salesforce account, what you can do is you can simply type in developer edition Salesforce, or you can simply type in developer edition sign up as well. So when you type in developer edition sign up, so if you look at the results here, so there is a result called as sorry, there is a link called as Salesforce like developer edition sign up here. So if you click on this, so you will be redirected to a page where you will be asked to provide few basic details. So like you will be asked to enter your name, email, and your job related details. So if you are not working, so you can provide some dummy details here. So after providing the details, if you click on sign me up, what happens is like you will receive an email to the email whichever you specify here, which is nothing but the account verification email. So when you click on that verify account link, you will be asked to set up a password. And after you set up the password, so generally like you will choose the username here itself. You will provide a username here itself. So after setting up the password, so you can log into Salesforce account or environment using the URL login.salesforce.com. So the trial accounts whichever we are going to create are of type developer editions, and in order to log into developer edition type of account, you can use the URL login.salesforce.com. So here you should enter your username and password. So let me enter one of okay. So like this is how the Salesforce account or environment looks like. So right now the page whichever you are seeing will be called as setup homepage. So here, if you look at the two tabs available here, so there is a tab called as home and there is another tab called as object manager. So setup page is one of the frequently visited pages in Salesforce account or Salesforce environment, because from this page we will be accessing, like it will be possible to access a lot of features that are available inside a Salesforce org or account. So now what I will do is, generally application in software terminology is nothing but, so application is nothing but it is a collection of components. So every application will be made up of lot of components. So like what we can tell is application is nothing but it is a collection of components. In order to build an application, what happens is like developers will create a lot of components. So in Salesforce, what happens is like in Salesforce we have like a lot of variety of components. So if you take a simple web application, what happens is like the different components which make a web application are, one is pages and the other one is something called as controllers or classes. So like, these are the two types of components which will make a web application. Now when you take an application in Salesforce, what happens is like again, so application is nothing but it is a collection of components. In Salesforce, what happens is like we will see lot of variety of components. So there are some 350 to 400 variety of components available on Salesforce platform. Now when it comes to these components, what happens is each component will have a name associated with it, as well as it will have a type associated with it. So each and every component whichever will be available on Salesforce, it will have a name associated with it as well as a type associated with it. So developers in the process of building an application or configuring an application, what happens is like they will make use of or they will create lot of variety of components. So what we will do is we will primarily one of the activity which we do as a DevOps or release engineer is we will migrate the components whichever are created or modified by the developers. Now I am going to create one component. So this is the account which I will be using as a development account. I am going to create one simple component. So in order to do that, what I will do is I'll click on this object manager tab. So clicking on object manager, what happens is like it will display all of the objects that are available inside this account or org. As of now, the reason why you are seeing these many objects inside this particular org is, so as I said earlier, Salesforce will come up with a lot of pre-built features. So all of these objects came by default, like majority of these objects came by default when I created the Salesforce account. So here, what I will do is I'll quickly create a object. So I will create an object. So for that, I just clicked on the create button and selected custom object option. So here for object, what I will do is I will name the object as demo some August 26, and let me give the plural name also. The while creating some types of components, what happens is like you will be asked to give a name for the component as well as a plural name as well. So here label is nothing but we are giving some name for the object. Plural label is nothing but it should be plural of the name whichever you give. So for now I am giving a I am giving the same name for label as well as plural label. So it is nothing but, so in the process of creating a object I am just giving a name for the object. So forget about the purpose of object, and apart from that, you are seeing a lot of other options here. So generally, like you are not required to worry about what is the purpose of object and what is the purpose of these options here, because these components will be created by developers. So here, I am creating this particular object and post that. So when I clicked on save, what happened is an object with the name demo August, demo AUG 26 got created. So this is nothing but I created a component. I created a component. Give me a minute. Sorry. So here, what happened is like I created a component whose name is demo AUG26, and the type of this particular component is object or custom object. So generally, like developers will create these components, and as a release or DevOps engineer, your responsibility will be to migrate those components from one environment to another environment. So now, as of now, like I created a component. So let me frame the request for this. So what happens is after developers create these components, so they will s- send an email to you asking to migrate that particular component. So the request might look in this manner. So they might send you an email saying, please migrate below components from dev to QA. And in the request, what they will do is they will also specify the name of the component. So for name, like almost all of the all of the components, what happens is like you will see something called as API name. So in order to migrate components from one environment to another environment, you should make use of this API name. So in the request, they will specify the API name of the component, as well as they will also specify the type of the component as well. So the type name for object is custom object. So it's not just object, but it is custom object. So when it comes to the actual type names of components, once you migrate a few types of components, you will be able to memorize the exact type names of components as well. Now, so this is how the request will look like. So once you get the request, so as a release engineer, your responsibility is to migrate the components from one environment to another environment. Another environment. You are not required to have the knowledge on how we can create the components and what is the purpose of those components. So now let's assume that I got a request in this particular manner. So now I will migrate this particular component from dev account to QA account using Workbench. So what I will do is I will log into the QA account in an incognito window. So here, let me name it as test at the rate 32. Sorry, let me enter the password. So I'm just trying to log into my QA account. One minute, it is asking for verification code. Okay, so this is my QA account or QA org. So let me show you the username. So if I go click on user detail here, so if you look at the username here, it's sai at the rate visualpath.com.qa. So similarly, if I go to the username in the other account or org, so if I go here, if you look at the username here, sai at the rate visualpath.com. Now, so this is my dev account. So in a dev account or org, I have an object with the name demo object. So sorry, demo AUG26. If I go to my QA org, if I search for objects here, so if I search with demo, so I have some other objects with which whose name contains demo, but we are not seeing any object with the name demo AUG26. Now, with by using Workbench, I will show you how we can migrate this particular component or object from dev account to QA account. So in order to migrate a component using Workbench, you should follow few steps. So first step is you should prepare something called as we should prepare an XML file. So you should prepare an XML file. So in this XML file, what happens is like you will specify the component that needs to be migrated. You will specify the component that needs to be migrated. So generally, like we call people will call this file as package.xml file or package XML file. So in package XML file, we will specify the components whichever needs to be migrated. So after preparing the XML file, the next step which you should do is you should do something called as retrieve operation. So retrieve operation will be done on source org. Source org is nothing but the org where your changes are present or the org in which the components are present. So you will do retrieve operation, and after retrieve operation, so you will do something called as deploy operation. So deploy operation will be done on the org into which you want to deploy the components or migrate the components. So this will be performed on source org, and deploy operation will be performed on target org. So target org is the org into which you want to deploy your changes. So these are the steps which you will follow in order to migrate changes using Workbench. Now, when it comes to Workbench, so Workbench is a web-based tool which comes integrated with each and every Salesforce account. Now, in order to log into Workbench, you can make use of the same Salesforce account credentials. Now, here what I will do is, so I have opened two windows in my browser. One is normal window and the other one is incognito window. In normal window, I have logged into the development dev account. So here in normal window, what I will do is I will log into Workbench account of dev.org. So Workbench accounts will be linked to like they comes integrated with each and every Salesforce account. So in order to log into Workbench, you can simply type in Workbench, and you can pick the result with URL workbench.developerforce.com. So I'll click on this, and I will click on, I'm just checking this checkbox, and you can keep the environment as production for developer edition types of accounts. So I'll click on login with Salesforce. So if I hover my mouse over this link here, so it says, if you look at the username, it's sai@visualpath.com. So this is nothing but I have logged into a Workbench account of my dev org or dev account. So similarly, what I will do is in incognito window, I will log into Workbench account of QA org. So I'll type in Workbench here, and I'll click on the first result. I will check this checkbox. I'm keeping the API version and environment the default values, because environment, all developer edition types of accounts are equivalent to production environments. So we'll look at the other type of environment later, but for now I'm keeping the value as production, and I will click on login with Salesforce. Now, so if you look at here, if you look at the username, it says sai at the rate visualpath.com.qa. Now, so in incognito window, I have logged into Workbench account of QA org. So the reason why I opened say QA account or QA org in incognito window is, generally it will be possible to log into two Salesforce accounts or multiple Salesforce orgs in single window of a browser, but it won't be possible to log into two or multiple Workbench accounts in single window of a browser. That's why like I opened Workbench account of QA org in incognito window. Now, so the first step which you should do in order to migrate components using Workbench is, you should prepare something called as XML file, which will be called as package XML file. In order to prepare this package XML file, you can make use of an extension. So like there is an extension available on Chrome, which makes you which makes your work simpler. So you can go to extensions. Let me. So if you go to extensions and click on manage extensions. So as of now, like I have already added an extension with this name, force.com migration tool package creator. So you can add this particular extension to your browser. As of now, like extension is already added. That's why what is happening is like I am seeing remove button. So I have added it earlier. Add this extension first. After adding the extension, so you should go to Workbench, and if you hover your mouse over info option, so you will see something called as metadata types and components. I'm clicking on metadata types and components. So here, the reason why you are seeing this section named package XML on the left hand side is because of the extension which I added. So you can try looking at this page before adding the extension, and after adding the extension you will notice that this section won't be present before adding the extension. So first I will reset this XML file whichever is appearing here. So here our requirement is, I need to migrate an object whose type is custom object. So you should type you should specify the type of the component in this search box. So I'm typing in custom object, and I will click on custom object. And here what is happening here is, when I typed in custom object and clicked on selected custom object, so it is displaying all of the components of that particular type available inside this particular org. As of now, there are 275 objects present in this particular org. Out of this, I need to migrate an object whose name is demo aug26. So I'm selecting the checkbox next to the component whichever I need to migrate. So when I selected this, so if you notice the difference here, so when I selected this, so the XML file got updated. So when I unselect this, so it again got updated. So I'm selecting this checkbox, and so this particular XML file got updated. So what I will do is, I will copy the XML file content, and so I will create a XML file on my system. So I will create a new file. I will name it as demo aug26.xml. And for location, let me select the location as downloads. So in downloads folder on my system, I am creating a file with the name demo aug26.xml. I will click on create XML, and I will paste the code whichever got generated when we selected the component that needs to be migrated on Workbench. So what happened is, we just selected the component that needs to be migrated, and because of the extension gave us an XML file. So we are just placing that XML code on a file on our system. Now, so with this, what I have done is, like, I have completed step one, which is nothing but preparing an XML file. The next step is, after you prepare the XML file, the next step is you should perform retrieve operation. So retrieve operation should be performed on source org. As of now, like I am on Workbench account of source org. I will click on retrieve option, which is appearing here under migration section. So after clicking on retrieve, so here there are a couple of options available here. I will click on choose file and I will select the XML file which I prepared. So it's demo AUG26. I will select this file. So there are a couple of other options that are getting displayed here. Forget about the meaning of these options now. I will click on next and next I will click on retrieve. So when I clicked on retrieve, as a response, like if you look at the status here, it says succeeded, and you can see it done getting changed to true. So that means the retrieve request got completed successfully. And as a response for retrieval operation, I received a zip file as a response. So like here, if you look at the response, so I got a zip file as a response. I will click on this download option, and so next thing is, so I downloaded this zip file. So this zip file is nothing but it contains the code of the component whichever we have specified in the package.xml. So here I now what I will do is I have downloaded the zip file, and now I will go to Workbench account of my QA org. So here I will perform the next step, which is nothing but the deploy step. I will click on deploy and I will click on choose file. For the file, I will select the zip file which I have downloaded, which we got as a response for the retrieve operation. So let me, it's August 26. Okay, so this is the zip file which I downloaded or which we got as a response for the retrieve operation. So I have selected the zip file. So apart from the choose file button, we have few other options here. So there is a specific purpose for each of these options. So we'll come to the meaning or purpose of these options later. So for now, after selecting the zip file, I will click on next and I will click on deploy. So here you can, if you look at the status of the deploy operation, it says succeeded. That means the deployment got completed successfully. Now, if I go to Object Manager in my QA org, and if I search with demo here on Object Manager page, I can see demo AUG26 object here. So this happened because of the deployment which we did. Now let me show you the contents that are present inside that particular zip file which we got as a response for retrieve operation. So if I unzip this, so if you look at the contents here, so there is a folder with the name unpackaged, and inside unpackaged folder there is a file with the name package.xml, and inside the same unpackaged folder there is a folder with the name objects. If I open this particular file, so like if you look at the contents inside that particular file, so this is the content that is present inside that particular file. So this is nothing but this is the code file of the component which I created. So code file of the object which we created with the name demo AUG26. So if you see here, you can see the name. Apart from that, we are seeing few other details as well. So this is nothing but this is the code file of the component. So now, whenever you create any component from Salesforce UI, what happens is like in the backend, Salesforce will store the details of that particular component in a XML file. So it will store the details of that particular component somewhere in the inside its server, like in an XML file. So what we did is like we with the help of that package XML file. So in package XML file, we have specified the component which needs to be migrated, and we sent a request to the Salesforce server asking for the code file of that particular component. And as a response, we got the code file of that particular component. and we deployed the components code file into the server of QA org. When we did that, that particular component got available in the QA org. So that's what happened in the backend. Now, so this is how you can migrate components using this particular tool called as Workbench. So generally in real time, what happens is like people will not make use of Workbench in order to migrate the components. So there are some reasons for that. So in order to just give you an understanding on how the migration process looks like, I picked up this Workbench. So it is a understanding things using Workbench is a kind of foundation to understand the things using CLI. So that's why I have started with this, even though people will not make use of Workbench. So in the next session, what we will do is like we will see with we'll start off with something called as CLI or SFDX. Otherwise, like I will pick one more example and I will show you how we can deploy those components using Workbench in the next session. So here, like I will stop my session here. If you have any questions, you can stay back and ask me. Otherwise, you can drop off.
Hello, Sai.
Yeah, Viva. Yeah, Viva.
So my question is, Sai, only it's workbench or anything for deployment, it's work for XML file only. Means currently in my organization, if I'm working on CRM part, which is like which work on JSON. So if I have to apply JSON, so how could I do that?
So if you want to do the like you are saying that if you specify the
Salesforce
comp, if
analytics
you,
I am talking about. If I have to
Mhm.
deploy that, then how could I?
So whether it is an analytic component or some other kind of component, so you'll follow similar kind of steps. You'll specify the component details in an XML file only. So as a response, what happens is like when we take analytic files, so like the code files as a response, we will get JSON files as a response instead of XML files. We will get JSON files as a response. So, but when it comes to the XML file, like when it comes to specifying the components, you will make use of XML file only.
Hello,
1 second.
hello.
Vibha, whether 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Vibha, did you understood or you have still any question?
I am understood like what you said, but I am not being satisfied with the answer because once I have tried with different tools like Git, but it won't
Mhm.
work.
You are saying that you have tried with the Git.
Yeah,
What have you tried with Git? You tried
deployed
retrieval.
to JSON, correct.
So you deployed changes from Git, which were in
I have
JSON.
tried, no, I have tried to deploy the changes. I have tried Workbench as well and Git also, but it won't work. So we have to go with the manual changes only. Like we have moved to we have downloaded the JSON file and we have uploaded in the upper environments.
So you are saying it for analytic components.
Yeah.
Okay. So actually it will work because like in one of the real-time project which I am working, like we made use of the normal deployment only.
You have ever
Then
tried for JSON? Ever tried for JSON?
yes, yes.
You have tried. Okay.
So problem. So what I'm trying to tell here is, as a response, you will get a JSON file. So even like when you deploy that, the changes will appear in the org using JSON file. Yeah.
So basically,
Okay.
I have another question, Sai.
Mhm.
You are telling about release engineer. So release engineer will be like doing the task only for from UAT to prod, as far as I know, right?
No, it's not like that. So we will take care of the deployments into QA and from QA to UAT as well. It depends on projects. Like in some projects, like generally like what happens is like if we have something called as pipelines configured, so the deployments will happen automatically. But release engineer will take care of migration to each and every org. It's not just from UAT to production, but it might vary from project to project. So in some projects, what might happen is,
I think there
so
is so much of background noise, which words are not clear.
is it clear?
Yeah,
So what I'm trying to tell you is, in some projects, people
you are
will
sitting in front of cooler or something like that.
no, no, no. So here is what I am doing. Turn on the fan. So I'm not sure what is happening is coming on. Let me mute you for a while. So, like, are others also hearing the background noise or only Vipa?
No, no, now it's better. Now it's better.
So, okay. I'm not sure. Uh,
Earlier there was background noise, but now it's
mhm. Okay. Okay then. So like what I will do is I'll stop the session here. So if you have any questions, you can get in touch with the institute people. So they will arrange a call with me. We can speak on that call. So I'll stop the session here. So like if you are willing to continue in this course, you can come up for the next session. So we'll continue the actual course from there.
My doubt is the QA environment you set up, it is the testtool.salesforce.com or login.salesforce.com.
So actually here we are making use of developer edition accounts. All of the developer edition type of
Hello,
accounts can be been using login.salesforce.com.
are you getting?
Yes, yes. So
I
what I'm
typed in message also.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to explain you the answer. Are you able to hear me? Hello.
yes, you're on.
So what I'm saying is all of the developer edition type of accounts can be logged in using login.salesforce.com URL. So in real time, people will make use of something called as sandboxes. So in order to log into a sandbox, we will go with test.salesforce.com.
Yeah, got
Okay. So let me end this session here. If you have any questions, you can ask for a call with me with the institute people. They will arrange a call with me.
it. Okay, thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.